Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review, and today we're looking at the Laurier Hydra Zulu GMT. This is a watch that I've had my eye on for a while. I've actually was watching the Laurier Hyperion for months, basically, waiting for a stock or a supply to come in. It hasn't been coming in, and they notified me of this variation that came out, which is the Hydra. And I took a look at this watch. I started comparing it to the Hyperion, and slowly but surely I started moving more towards the Hydra as far as my preferred watch goes. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to go through the 5 typical things that we typically go through when it comes down to evaluating a watch. And at the end, we'll have some conclusions, some pros and cons and things like that with the rating, the ultimate rating at the end, which is whether or not it's a recommendation or not. So let's get started with size. So the overall size of this watch is kind of your compact sport diver type watch. And I say sport because there's a sporty feel to this, primarily because of the strap, which is it's an awesome rubber strap. We'll get more into that when it comes down to the fitment and overall finish of the watch. But the size of the watch is, I would say, more compact, and it's a smaller than average dive watch. It certainly isn't the same weight with the rubber strap. You're not going to have as much weight. So overall, I think the size of this watch is probably more appealing to those with average size wrists, maybe even smaller average size wrists. So keep that in mind, that this is a really good watch for those of you that are not really into the full-size dive watch type scene. As far as fitment goes, this is a surprise to me. The fitment for this watch is worse than it is for a Casio watch. The spacing between the holes on the strap are further apart than on the typical Casio watch. And this answers kind of my hunch or my suspicion. This watch doesn't really fit me very well, as far as it goes from being a little bit too loose to being a little bit too tight. And more so than a typical Casio watch. And the reason why, because I put a Casio strap next to this one, and the holes are definitely further apart than on a Casio watch. I've been a huge critic of the Casio strap for a long time. So this is not a surprise. The straps, the holes on this strap are just too far apart. You're going to have a slightly loose fit or a slightly tight fit. You're not going to get that in between. You might get the in between fit if you're lucky and the watch fits just right on one particular hole. That's great. Anyway, I'm not a fan of the strap holes. I am a huge fan of the strap. It is one of the best rubber straps I've come across. Very, very easy to manipulate, very supple, very flexible. And the keepers on this also keep the tag end of the strap in place. And again, remember, the keepers are these little guys right up here. And these are the things that move around. Now, these are both independent. They slide up and down on the strap itself. But at the same time, these guys, they pretty much stay in place. This rubber strap, I really, really like this rubber strap. I just don't like the holes on it. So let's go off to finish. Now, we're kind of talking about finish when we come to the strap. But you have the typical finish. It's DLC coated from the pin and buckle on the strap to the case itself. I mean, it's a very tactical looking watch, almost tactical for those of you that are, into the military, law enforcement kind of stuff. You get into tactical stuff all the time, and pretty soon you hear the term tactical. Everything is tactical. This actually is, it's got the DLC coating. It's a dull finish. It's non-reflective, or as non-reflective as the finish can be. It's just a great overall finish to this watch as far as the color scheme goes. Now, I want to talk more about the color scheme, because when you look closely at the dial, you're going to see a bunch of different colors going on there. You're going to have this kind of almost light green teal color on the 24-hour track for the GMT. You've got the Fotina on the hour markers, same color on the bezel. And then you've got this handset that is just bright white with the Fotina lume in the arrows and on the minute hand as well as the second hand. So you've got those colors, and then a red GMT hand. So there's all of these different colors playing back and forth inside this watch. The crown is finished really well. Coin edge texture on the crown. You've got a coin edge texture on the bezel. The bezel is an awesome bezel here. I'll rotate it for you. And it's fantastic. It's got the right amount of resistance. It's not too hard to move. There is no back play on this whatsoever. This might be one of the best bezels that I've come across. It's really good. So the overall color scheme on this, I love it. I love the different colors. They all kind of go together. That brings me up to another interesting point too, and this kind of gets into that legibility side, but every one of these color schemes has its own purpose behind it. So the hour hand, the minute hand, the second hand, just bright white. Great contrast, highly legible. You've got the red GMT hand, totally separate function from the hour hand, minute hand, and second hand. And then you've got the 24-hour track, which is that light green teal kind of color around the very outside edge of the dial. You've got the white minute track in between the hour markers, perfect. And you've got the faux color, the Fotina color of the hour markers, and then the DLC coating. So you've got all these different colors that kind of indicate a different function for that particular part of the watch. So something to really take a look at. I think they do a great job of kind of color coding in a way the different things that this watch can do and measure and keep track of. So as far as the finish goes, I love it. There's the domed hezolite crystal, so be cautious about scratches. Is this a work watch? Probably a work watch, but I would not use it for manual labor if you're bumping into a lot of stuff, construction, in my case, lawn and landscape type work. I wouldn't wear this probably for that unless I knew that it was just lawn mowing and you know, string trimming around trees and stuff like that, where I'm really not bumping into things. If I'm doing anything with shrubs or things like that, I just think the hezolite crystal, yeah, you can take poly watch and you know, buff out most of the stuff, but I just, you know, I don't want to spend a lot of time, you know, buffing that out on a hezolite crystal. So I try to minimize as best I can. There's a few hairline scratches in it already, and that's just the way it is with any type of wear whatsoever. Even when I'm doing just a review and I'm not really wearing it around that much, I always get hairline scratches on my case, the bracelet, the crystal, if it's a non-sapphire crystal. So to me, that's just the way it goes. But I think the domed hezolite crystal is phenomenal. The distortion that you get off of this hezolite crystal is great. It really plays with the light, bends the different shapes as you look at it from more of a side angle versus straight down from the top. I just love the look that you get from this. It has a little bit of a vintage sporty look to this watch. The handset, a little more vintage look to it. The DLC coating, some of the color schemes on here has a little bit more of a modern take. So it's really got this kind of vintage sport thing going on, which is, I appreciate that too, because I'm always interested in some of these vintage style watches, but at the same time, I want the modern technology. I want the modern niceties, the toughness, those kind of the materials, that kind of thing. So I think it does all of that. And then again, you throw the hezolite in there, that's old fashioned. So I think that's something to kind of keep in mind, that the crystal itself kind of plays with that vintage, modern type tension, I guess, with the watch design. So the accuracy of this watch is well within spec, not an issue whatsoever. Laurier does a great job of quality control, manufacturing, putting this watch together, sending it out to customers. It was in a great package. I love the packaging. No issues whatsoever with accuracy. Now, legibility and lume. Legibility, coming back to that finishing process of this watch. What a great job in finishing. And it lends itself to being a more legible watch. And so when I look at this watch, the contrast here is really, really good. You have these, again, super bright white hands, the hour marker, the minute, or the hour hand, the minute hand, the second hand on a black dial. You've got the Fotina markers, which really kind of stands out. At the same time, the hour hand, minute hand, and the second hand, they dominate the view when it comes to the dial, which is, I think, important because the position of those hands is the first thing that you recognize, and then you overlay that on where is it on the dial. And I think that's kind of the order that you see this in. The handset is what you see first because it's so bright, and then it overlays onto this dial. You've got the Fotina markers, you've got the black dial, you have the light-colored 24-hour ring around the outside, which is also great. One of the things that drove me towards the Hydra over the Hyperion, and this was kind of the final straw, was that they put the 24-hour track inside on the dial and not on the bezel. I prefer that because, to me, if I'm going to keep track of the time and the second time zone, I don't need to have it on a bezel. As a matter of fact, I don't want to have to worry about shifting the bezel around because typically the GMT hand is going to line up with that. So I'm not really moving the GMT bezel that much anyway. Some people say, well, you can use the regular dial, keep track of it that way, and then use the bezel as a second or a third time zone. I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't need 3 time zones. 2 is plenty. 3, I'm not that much of a traveler, or I don't have a lot of family in a variety of places around the world or even in this country to have to keep track of 3 time zones. So to me, having the 24-hour track on the inside on the dial and then saving the timing bezel, which I do use for my job, and I use for a variety of other things too around the house, was a much better combination. And the Hyperion had the 24-hour bezel with no timing bezel really attached to it at all. So another thing that drove me towards the Hydra, and I think that was the last straw on the camel's back that said, you know what, the Hydra is the way to go, not the Hyperion. So if you're looking at the Hyperion, I love the Hyperion. I love the design of it. I love the look, the handset, all of that. But to me, the Hydra offers a few more functions that I think are more useful in the long run. as a result of that. And it goes down to legibility, usability, the finishing of what's going on here. All those things together really make this watch a very, in my opinion, the very unique watch that it is. So the important features of this watch are separated from each other by kind of like different color codes. And so the legibility for that reason is really good. So not only is it a finishing technique, but it lends itself to legibility. Now lume, it might be a little different under lume because the hour hand and the GMT hand, you might get those two confused if you're not really familiar with the watch, or you don't wear the watch very often. But the hour hand is so much larger of an arrowhead that I just don't think that you're going to make that mistake or that confusion for very long. So, but the important features of this watch are separated by colors, which I think is great. Excellent lume, all night lume. It's not the most bright lume at 3 or 4 in the morning. So when I say it's the best, no, it's not the best out there. Part of it is it's the Fotina color, which kind of subdues the lume to begin with. The 24-hour track around the outside ring of the dial is also one of the first things to fade over time. So yeah, I'd like to see that stick around a little bit longer on the lume side, but overall lume, it is excellent. It is well above average. It does a great job. And the design of the lume is phenomenal. I love the design. That 24-hour ring is fully lumed. The bezel is lumed. You got the handset, the hour markers. There's just a lot of cool looking lume on this watch. Water resistance is 200 meters, so there's no issue, no concern in my book of any kind of water exposure. So long as the crown is screwed down, you should be good to go with water. It can handle some serious depth. All right, what are the positives of this watch? My goodness, it's the finish. And all the things I've stated before from the finish, you've got great legibility, the separate function and the way that the finish lends itself to identifying the different functions within the watch. All these things make for a great sport dive watch combination set. This is a really unique watch. The more I look at this watch, there's a lot of cool things on here. The negatives goes back to the strap. The holes are just too far apart. They should have manufactured that strap with the holes a little bit closer together. And then also you have the smaller dial. Now this is not something that I have it's not a huge ding at all, but it's just something to be aware of. When you take the 24-hour bezel and put it on the inside, you're going to end up compressing that dial, those hour markers, the minute track, the hour hands, the minute hand. You're going to start compressing things down. And when you start off with a smaller case design to start with, the interior of that dial is going to get smaller right away. So uses for this, definitely. I would have this as an everyday user watch. The headlight crystal is the only caution. Yeah, you're gonna have to polywatch it. You're gonna have to polish some things up on the crystal itself. But I think this is definitely an office watch, professional watch. I think you're gonna have a harder time wearing this for any kind of like more formal occasions because it is a DLC coated, a black, almost an entirely black watch. Probably not the most formal style watch out there. At the same time, it's a great travel watch. You've got your GMT function. You've still maintained the timing bezel. There's some great things about this. 200 meters of water resistance. So this is a watch that you can take traveling and wear it in just about any circumstance. So overall score for this watch is a 9.8 out of 10. I highly recommend this watch. I think the value that this watch presents for the dollar is superior to the Hyperion, just barely. I know there's a lot of huge Hyperion fans out there. I'm still one of them. But I think this is just slightly better than the Hyperion. I think the Hydra does some things that are very unique and very helpful, very useful, more so than the Hyperion. And so I think this is a highly recommend. Go out and check it out. Put your name down if they haven't run out of these. Put your name down, get the notification when they put a new stock list up, and get your Hydra as soon as you can. I think it's a great watch. So there you go. That's the final review for this watch. I think it's a great buy. I think it's a high value watch. It's a highly recommend for me. 9.8 out of 10. The minor thing's really the strap. And then you've also got the smaller dial, which is kind of you just kind of accept that because of the size of the case to begin with. But put in the comments down below what you think of this watch, what you think of Lorier as a brand. Do you have any concerns with them? Do you have watches from Lorier yourself? I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in this, you can certainly check out the link I'll have in the description to Lorier, just to the website in general. They've got a bunch of cool watches there. Check them all out. So there you go. My name's Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear Review. We'll catch you guys next time.